the International Day of the Girl Child. I think this day should be every day, to be honest. But essentially, it's a day, I think, where the rights of girls, the voices of young girls are amplified. The reason why I think this should be every day is because young girls around the world are silenced. They are not given the platforms to share their own stories. When their stories are told, they're often not told by them. They're told by their male counterparts. So the International Day of the Girl Child is where we amplify the stories of young girls, whether positive, whether negative. It's just their lived experiences. Digital generation, our generation. So this is special for me because I think I've started to occupy this digital space very much so since I started to take my art seriously. For me, I immediately think about the stories that we see online, on social media, in the news. Who tells these stories, and what do the stories tell us about ourselves? I think we so often see stories that label us or don't actually represent us. So for me, I think about us taking back our voices through the digital world, different forms of medium, and telling our stories. So in my capacity as the co-founder of Wona Collective, we tell stories. We invite young women to tell stories. We have a podcast called Letters, which basically features the stories of young Malawian women, older Malawian women in the diaspora in Malawi. And something that I noticed when we released the podcast is that I think it was like close to 80%, but the majority of our listeners are women. Our stories center women, and our listeners are women. But I think men need to engage in our stories more. So I think that's where I see a divide. In situations where women are centered, men need to also still stay engaged. So at the moment, Wona Collective is just run by my co-founder and I. So it's just the two of us. A lot of people think that we have a big team. Our goal is to have more people on board, specifically women, because like I said earlier, I think we need more women in Malawi to stand up and tell their stories, and be behind the camera and also be in front of the camera. And so I think when I see the gender divide, my hope is that in situations where women are in front of the camera and are telling stories of their lived experiences, it can still be engaging to men. So I don't know if it's the responsibility of the storyteller or if it's something that I can challenge the audience to think about. But that's definitely where I see a divide. So I think we can bridge that gap by telling more stories, having more content out there. I think something that I see a lot is there are great initiatives coming up, which support women, which I see even support persons with disabilities, for example, support marginalized groups. But I don't necessarily think they always have to be separate. I think it is important that we do have spaces specifically for women, but I would like to see also on tables where decisions are being made, in very important rooms that are like, the dominant rooms in an industry. For example, in the creative industry, I would like to see women's stories. I would like to see women fill up those spaces. I think also something that I would like to see is less stories of struggle. As African women, it's always like how did you get here? What struggles did you go through to get here? I would like to see more women celebrated, more women experiencing joy. Those are the examples that I think young girls should have. They should know that in order that to be successful, you can also be happy. You can also be joyful. You don't always have to struggle as an African woman. A digital revolution. So I think that works well for me because I'm an introvert. I really like to use my art, my visual arts. I animate and I paint, and predominantly. I like to use my visual arts to tell a story, and they're usually very bold statements, and statements that I would not sit down and tweet or call someone out on. So how I imagine more women or young girls, taking up space digitally is just that, having the opportunity to express themselves how they wish. And I really appreciate the fact that with social media or just with the internet, I don't have to be someone who is outspoken verbally, but I can be someone who is outspoken visually. And people have their different mediums. Some people may not be creatives, and that's okay. You can still have a way and a space, or to share your voice. And sometimes people may not want to share their voices. They may want to consume information. So it's a very tangible, very flexible space, and I appreciate that.